Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Ireland here from Farrowjamieson, and we're ready to get underway. At this point, I'll hand over to Gordon and to Chris Clark. Gordon, if you'd like to introduce Chris, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to have you with us, and we realise that we have people on the webinar who are both interested in the regional manager role and others who are interested in what we've called the Major Development Projects Funding Manager. For the ease of purpose this afternoon, we'll actually call that latter role the Vision Partner role, which is actually what it is called by World Vision, but when we went to market, we called it the Major Development Projects Funding Manager. So really we are looking at two roles, the Regional Manager and Vision Partner roles. At the end of the webinar, it may be that you will feel like you would be interested in either one of those roles. You might have applied for one and think that you could be interested in the other. And so we are interested in your feedback on that. We are also interested in your feedback on if you've applied for a role in one region, you may actually be willing to consider relocating to take up such a role in another region. And we're flexible around discussing that with you as well. In addition to all of that, for the Vision Partner role, there is the possibility of it being a mixed role in the sense of a part-time role mixed with somebody else. So again, we're interested in talking to you about that kind of flexibility. So just that's a heads up as to the kind of feedback we'll be looking for at the end of the webinar. But we're delighted to have Chris Clark with us here this afternoon after a rather traumatic getting through the traffic. But I'm sure as a Chief Executive of World Vision, an organisation that's there to help people in need and handle uncertainties and unpredicted events, Chris, you'd be well used to having to handle things like hold-ups on the motorway.
Yeah, hi Gordon. Hey, look everyone, I'm really sorry that we've had to delay things here. It was a truck turning over on the motorway which just absolutely blocked traffic up for the last hour, and unfortunately I was stuck behind it. But yeah, it's part of the mix of living here in Auckland.
It's great to have you here. So I'd be interested in exploring, first of all, for those who are part of the webinar, why you joined World Vision, how long you've been with the organisation. My understanding was I think you were Chief Executive previously of the Hawke's Bay District Health Board. And so why did you leave the health sector in a Chief Executive role there to come to World Vision?
Well, to be honest, when I was first approached by World Vision, it was a little bit of an inconvenience. My wife and I were about to take a fantastic job in Oxford in the UK, which was a mix of my old work, which is running hospitals, and also an academic role. So it offered a lot, and we were pretty excited about that, as was our kids. And our kids have said to us, look, we'll go anywhere in the world except Auckland. And so when World Vision rang up and said, hey, we've got this neat job, we'd like to talk to you about it, I thought, oh, no. But straight away, to be honest, I got a sense that this was one that we should look at really, really seriously. And over the next 2 to 3 months, as I thought through what World Vision does, its leadership, the challenges that it faced, I think I basically fell in love with World Vision, which is a kind of a really dangerous thing to do, because I knew World Vision from being a kid and having done the 40-hour famine. And I'd actually really enjoyed working with Christians. I wasn't quite so sure I wanted to work for Christians. Mm-hmm. And as time wore on, I started to think more and more about World Vision. And then one day I was on a plane, and I was flying actually back from the UK, and I was sitting there thinking, you know what, I know in a year's time exactly what I'll be doing in the health world. I know the issues, I don't know the names yet of the people, but I know what my day will look like. But instead I thought, you know what, I have no idea what I'll be doing in World Vision in a year's time, except that it promises to be the most extraordinary adventure, an adventure professionally and emotionally, but above all spiritually. And I think based on that, I suddenly said, oh, maybe Lord, you're in this conversation. So I said yes, somewhat tremulously to World Vision. I have to say I every day thank the Lord for that decision, because I've been there now 3 years. And it truly has been one of the most exciting adventures I've ever had, both professionally as well as personally and as a family.
You grew up knowing about World Vision. What's been the eye-openers for you, maybe a couple of things that have changed your perspective about World Vision now working for the organisation rather than just being an observer of the organisation?
Two things, and both people responses. I guess like a lot of people, I had a fairly jaundiced view of the not-for-profit sector. I worked a lot with not-for-profits and found them rich in energy and passion and so on, but often quite light in terms of management, in terms of governance. Coming into World Vision, what I've really been struck by is just by how rapidly professionalising the sector is, and how many people are coming into World Vision, often at midpoints in their careers, and it's a much more professional organisation in a good sense than I'd anticipated. And then the second thing for me is actually just a huge privilege of meeting our staff in the field. We've got 45,000 staff around the world, 41,000 of whom are in the field. And time after time, meeting these extraordinary people who really give beyond anything we could possibly imagine, often living in really dangerous circumstances, often at great risk to themselves and their families, yet they do it for this great passion to serve the world's children. So I think that from those two are the things for me. One is how rapidly professionalising the sector is, and then secondly is just the quality of the people who make up World Vision.
We'd like to start by getting that picture of the largeness of the global organisation and its history, which you've joined. I think I saw on the internet that it's got over $1 billion turnover now, which is a fairly large global organisation when it comes to it.
Well, look, it's even more than that. So last year it was $2.9 billion US dollars. So that's across 100 countries, and that's employing 45,000 staff. So depending how you calculate these things, this is the world's or among the world's largest not-for-profits. Founded many years ago, interestingly enough, almost by accident it would seem, but you can see God's hand in it right from the start. A Baptist pastor, Bob Pierce, an American, was an evangelist, and he was in China. This is after the war. And he was preaching, and the next day he went back and was presented with a child who'd been quite badly beaten up the night before for becoming a Christian, an Israeli. And the woman who presented this child to him said, "What are you going to do about this?" And Bob Pierce was about to board a plane. He was completely unprepared for the encounter. And he responded and simply said, "Look, I don't know." And he reached into his pocket and pulled out a $5 US bill and gave it to the child and said, "I will send one of these to you every month for the rest of your life," which he duly did. And from that seemingly accidental encounter in China grew World Vision. Started in the United States, as I say now grows to 100 countries. New Zealand's quite formative in it because when it set up, each country was independent, and then in the very early days, the countries decided to come together and form the partnership, as we call it. And World Vision was one of those 4 founding countries. So although we're quite small in the partnership, we are right at the heart of the history of World Vision. And in New Zealand, we've been here for 41, 42 years.
I imagine that because you were there at the formative stage, even though we're small in size, New Zealand probably has a bigger influence in some areas within World Vision globally than our numbers would suggest. Is that the case?
Yeah, it is. This is one of the unexpected joys of working for World Vision, is that in one sense we're only about 2% of total revenue, but our impact is far greater than that because we're seen as that small, nimble, agile country at the bottom of the world that can do stuff. And so often what's happened in the life of World Vision New Zealand is stuff that we've pioneered here has then been captured by the rest of the world and actually essentially scaled, if not a technical word, to the rest of the partnership. And indeed, when I was appointed, that was the brief I was given, which was to return New Zealand to being that agile, innovative, Christian-based World Vision, which did stuff which could then be scaled to the rest of the world. And in fact, that's already started to happen, which has been one of the delights. And one of the joys of working for World Vision is you get to work in your own country, but also potentially in an international context.
So I think it's been, was it 1971 that was founded here in New Zealand? Is that right?
That's right.
So a lot has happened over that post 30 years. Do you want to comment on the vision and mission statements that the people who are watching the webinar can see in front of them?
So our vision has been unchanged through those 41 years here in New Zealand. It's a vision that's shared internationally. And it has really 2 parts to it. The first part is that our vision for every child, life in all its fullness. And critically, we're a faith-based organisation, and we bring our faith to every aspect of what we do, including our understanding of development. So some development agencies will focus on people's physical and emotional needs. What we say is that's only part of the story of development. We also have to look after people's spirituality as part of development. So hence the phrase life in all its fullness. We're child-focused in the sense that our belief is that if you work with children in community, you can change the world. And we work with the most vulnerable children. So that means that we target countries where the most vulnerable children live, which is why we work in many contexts which are Hindu, Muslim, fragile states, often our staff working in quite challenging and personally risky situations. And our values, we've got 6 values. Right at the heart of them is that we are Christian. And we talk about this in the sense of a family likeness, because within the World Vision Partnership, you've got everything from Eastern Orthodox expressions of Christianity through to, say, North American fundamentalism, for want of 2 points. And so what do we mean by that? And how do we actually talk about Christianity in such different contexts, particularly when in many parts of the world Christianity is a minority, or I need to say you're a Christian, risks your life. And so we talk about a family likeness, and the likeness is in Christ. So that's our first value. Our second value is that we're committed to the poor, and that means that we focus our efforts on the most vulnerable people in the most vulnerable countries in the world. Our third value, I guess you see in lots of statements, but we value people, and that has an importance for us both in terms of how we approach development. So we don't do it to people, we don't do it to countries or do it to communities. We walk alongside them and partner with communities. And we've had 60 years of working around the world, and to be honest, we've made a few mistakes along the way, but our development methodology is very much based on a people empowerment and community empowerment model. And then our fourth value is that we are stewards. And we never lose sight of the fact that we hold money on behalf of New Zealanders, in the case of World Vision New Zealand. And the expectation is that we will bring our very best efforts to make sure that that money is applied to the most needy children and in the very best ways. So for that means we focus very much on ensuring that as much money as possible goes overseas, that we steward those resources well, and we ensure that all our work is of the highest quality. Our fifth value, that we are partners. The trouble of being World Vision is we're so big. In some respects, we don't need to partner with anybody because actually we can partner with ourselves. But actually, there's a sort of an arrogance that lies behind that kind of view. And in New Zealand, we've been very much challenging that and very much working to look with other NGOs here in New Zealand, such as Tear Fund, such as Oxfam, such as Save the Children, such as Christian Blind Mission, and so on, but also partnering with other organisations overseas in the field. So now, when we start a project, we always start by saying, who else is working here, and how can we partner and support their efforts rather than just coming in with the World Vision flags. And then lastly, we're responsive. And for anyone who's contemplating a career in development or a career with World Vision, I think one of the huge challenges for us is that we're working at the very edge of some of the world's most complex and wicked problems. And thus we need really able and effective people who are able to respond to community needs, able to respond to changing understandings of society, and bring that real thinking to our work. So what we did 5 years ago, you'll see a likeness there, but even today we're having to respond to a very different worldview than, say, 5 years ago.
So this next slide, which we're looking at, actually indicates some of the areas that you're working on and in. Do you want to comment on those?
Yeah, we talk about a three-legged stool when we talk about World Vision. The first leg is the advocacy leg. And what this is about is when we look at changing the world and when we look at what causes poverty, a lot of it is actually caused by unjust systems. It's caused by corrupt government. It's caused by poor policy. It's caused by governments deciding to put money into arms rather than, say, into healthcare or into education. So a lot of what we do is we try and hold governments accountable for looking after their own people. And we work very closely there. We've been very much involved in both the implementation and the development of the Millennium Development Goals. So an important part of what we do is advocacy, speaking on behalf of the poor across the world. But it's more important than that in the sense that where possible, we actually try and work with communities to encourage them to be their own advocates, because that's much more powerful than a Western advocate speaking on their behalf. Secondly, and sadly, the second leg of our stool is disaster relief and mitigation and recovery. We kind of hoped we were moving out of what started us, which was famine and flood and disaster and so on. But increasingly in recent times, we've had to get ourselves very much involved as a consequence of things such as the Boxing Day tsunami in Asia, the Haiti earthquake in 2010 in Haiti, the Japan earthquake in 2011, and then also in Christchurch. We were very actively involved in the Christchurch earthquake on the 22nd of February and the one that preceded that in September. So we spend a lot of our time actually responding to disasters. And interestingly enough, the number of disasters has gone up exponentially in the last 10 to 15 years. So while we would love to move beyond that into long-term development, we still see a critical need for us to be there at that first stage of responding to disasters around the globe. Currently we're working in Niger and Mali and responding to the first famine of the 21st century. Our last area of development, and by far our biggest area, is community development. And we talk here about area development programs. And this is really the joy and the wonder of working with World Vision. So these are 15-year projects around the globe across 100 countries, funded by child sponsorship. And what we do is we go into a community with vulnerable children at their invitation. We never go in otherwise. And for the first couple of years, we seemingly do nothing. But in fact, we're doing everything. What we're doing is working alongside that community, understanding their needs, and particularly understanding not so much what's wrong with that community, but what's right with that community. And seeking to build leaders, be they church leaders, be they youth leaders, be they farming leaders, particularly women. And so what we do is we work alongside those groups, build their leadership up, and always asking the question, what is the root cause of the challenge that faces this community? So we do that for the first 2 years, and then for the remaining 13 odd years, we work alongside the community. If you go to these villages, what you'll see is not so much World Vision and its flag, but what you'll see is empowered communities doing their own development. And that's what we've done really around the world for the last 60 odd years.
Mm. And finally, in this section, why do you do it?
Well, we do it because Christ, when challenged by "Are you the one?" by John the Baptist, responded, "Tell them what you've seen and heard. The blind now see, the deaf now hear, the lame now walk, and the good news is preached." And that's our belief, is that we're called to bring that kind of healing to this world. So that's why we do it. And of course, the numbers speak for themselves. Currently, around 25,000 children die every day from illnesses that are preventable.
Amazing figure, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. And our association of children is, we always assume that poverty is noisy, that is the crying child. My experience of poverty is that poverty is quiet. Poverty is silent. And that's why we do what we do.
You've got to make the noise on their behalf.
We do. Yeah, that's right, Gordon. That's a good way of putting it.
All right. Well, you've listened, folks, to us for a little while, or to Chris and Gordon. And so what we're going to do now is run a poll, and we'll put that on your screen for you. So just bear with us for a second. In that poll, we're going to ask the question, what is the strongest reason for your interest in these roles? Just bear with us. Okay. So you should see that on your screen now. I hope that comes in. And if you just want to pick one of those, it's not a trick question or anything. I trust you can see that up there.
There's no right or wrong answer.
No right or wrong answer. So if you can see that poll, just get underway and vote. You might be interested in a few of those things, but the thing that makes the biggest impact for you. Okay, so we're getting some of you voting in. We've had about 40% of you vote. Okay, that's great. Some 80% of you have voted, so just leave it open for a few more seconds. 90% of you, 95. Okay. All right. Okay, we'll close the poll now and just give you an idea of where those polls are. We'll share that with you, and you'll be able to see those, that 53% of you were interested about issues of poverty, or that was your prime reason for being interested in the role. 24% because it's a Christian organisation, and 12 each about the children and about the World Vision brand. So look, really appreciate your input there, and quite interesting, a wide spread of motivators for you looking at these particular positions.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
So Chris, in this next section that we want to talk about, we felt it would be really useful for people to get a grasp of World Vision New Zealand. We've looked at the global organisation, and we wondered if you could tell us a wee bit more about who is World Vision New Zealand.
First and foremost, World Vision New Zealand is its supporters. It's not its staff at all. Began back in 1971 and currently has around about 100,000 active supporters across New Zealand. The 40-hour famine, which of course we're perhaps most known for, last year involved 161,000 children. It's 1 in 4 children participated in the famine, so it's New Zealand's largest youth event every year. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's become, I think, a rite of passage for New Zealanders to do the 40-hour famine, irrespective of whether they have a faith, because we're saying it. Let's think about a world bigger than ourselves. Our main office is in Auckland, in Penrose, very modern building actually, a nice part of Penrose. And then we've got offices also in Christchurch and Wellington. Our turnover last year was $55 million, and our best year, the year of the Haiti earthquake, $60 million. And on average, just under 80% of every dollar goes overseas for development. So we have among the lowest percentage of operating costs of any NGO in New Zealand, and we're very determined to get that even lower.
You run as an independent trust in New Zealand. What does that mean? So what it means is that we're legally we're established under the Trustee Act. We have our own board and our own chief executive. I report to my board, and we've got about 120 employees at the moment, most in Auckland, but spread through Wellington and Christchurch. What it also means is that because we're part of an international federation, we talk about twin citizenship. So you're a member of the New Zealand World Vision organisation, but you're also a part of this big international family. And even though I see no one ticked career as one of the drivers, one of the delights in working for World Vision is it's possible to have a career in development that lasts many, many years, because not just within New Zealand,
but also the opportunities to work internationally, both in the field or similar offices to New Zealand.
Is that actually happening? Have you
Yeah.
got many New Zealanders overseas who have worked first in New Zealand?
Well, look, let me give you 4 examples. In the past year, 3 of my senior leadership team have been promoted to major international roles with World Vision. One now heads up human resources for the Asia-Pacific region, half the world's population. Second one has gone off to head up youth engagement for the entire World Vision family. And the third one's gone off to head finance for the Pacific region. So 3 major appointments out of the New Zealand team. And then a 4th in my team has just gone off to be CEO of Tier Fund. So World Vision New Zealand's got a reputation for growing talent, and we want to do that, frankly. We want to find bright young, or not so young necessarily, but bright young people, grow them and nurture them, and incubate them for world leadership.
You also have a number who are involved as Kiwis who are actually in the development side of things, don't you? I know some myself who are very capable people who have given their lives really to locating and developing poor areas of the world and giving their lives for that.
You're absolutely right, Gordon. So there are 54 previous World Vision New Zealand employees still working for World Vision somewhere in the globe, mostly in developing countries. And then if you think of others who've gone on to organisations outside of World Vision, that number gets close to 70 or 80. So it's a very good, for those people interested in development or particularly working in a developing country, it's a very good step through that kind of work.
We've kind of looked at that issue, and you've spoken very much about World Vision both as a humanitarian organisation and a Christian organisation. Do you want to just elaborate a wee bit more on the importance of that journey of Christian faith for people taking up these different roles here, the regional manager role and the vision partners role, and maybe some nuances, other nuances in relation to that?
So look, I'm really conscious that when we use the word Christian, that can conjure up a whole lot of different images in people's minds, and some of them not necessarily so positive. So let me explain how we think about these issues. We see that issues of spirituality or faith are absolutely fundamental to development, and so we don't turn a blind eye to that. We don't regard that as the elephant in the room. We think deeply about our theology and how we understand change happens in the world, and the expectation is that people will have understanding of Christianity. Now, secondly, though, our view is that it's not a case of drawing a fence and saying somebody's in or somebody's out. We think much more as about a journey towards the well, towards Christ. And so when we're talking to people, we're very interested in understanding their faith journey. And what we observe is that some people are very close to that well, and some people are some distance from that, but journeying towards it. And so our approach is that we look very carefully at people's faith journey, and when we interview, that's one of the questions are we keen to understand. And then we use quite a bit of discernment in terms of, is this person somebody who would be comfortable with the World Vision ethos and could learn and go through it? What we say, though, as an organisation is that though we're Christian-based or a faith-based organisation, we walk a very fine line because we want to speak to all New Zealand, not just Christians. And I think that's where World Vision has been very successful in terms of being a Christian-based organisation, but can speak to all New Zealanders irrespective of their faith. So that's the kind of the approach that we take. Of course, we work in many contexts where to be a Christian would see you killed. And so we've done a lot of work about thinking about how we work in Muslim and Hindu and Buddhist contexts. And indeed, we have some staff internationally who aren't Christians, but are Muslim or Hindu. But the requirement is that, again, they support the ethos of World Vision and its commitment to the gospel.
Chris, there's been a question raised. You're talking about international work there. Somebody's raised the question, how do you deal with that in Pakistan? There is an area which makes more money out of growing opium and making arms and growing crops. Interesting question. I just wonder what your response is to that.
Look, it's one of the hardest questions we have to deal with, and on a daily basis. To be honest, in some countries, the leadership is so corrupt we just cannot work there. And the reason we can't work there is because we can't give the promise to our donors or our supporters that their money will be well spent. We never give money to government. We always work independent of government, so we might work through other NGOs, but we'll never actually give the money to government. So that way we protect the funding right from the start. And we've had years and years and years of experiences of working in very corrupt countries. One thing it means is that we have 300 staff across the globe who are auditors, who sit there and are constantly auditing the spend to make sure that there's no hint of corruption. But sadly it means in some parts of the world we just cannot work there.
Okay.
Now, earlier you mentioned about World Vision being a humanitarian organisation, but it's also at heart a Christian organisation where people are on a faith journey. Is there nuances you would like to just elaborate on in relation to both the regional manager's role and the Vision Partners role and what you're looking for in this regard?
Critically in the two roles, the regional manager roles, there will be an expectation that they are a major leader in Christchurch and Wellington and Auckland, an expectation that they will be engaging with churches. So a familiarity and understanding of Christianity is absolutely critical there. For those who are interested and willing, we'd certainly see them doing preaching and being involved in youth activities with churches. But for those who would want to run 100 miles from that, don't not apply, come and have the conversation with us, is what I'd say. In relation to the vision partner role, in terms of working with corporates and so on, certainly understanding our ethos and how that informs our understanding of development and how we actually approach our work again is pretty important.
It's helpful. The last part of this webinar is really around spelling out a wee bit more the nature of these roles that you're looking for. The first of all, the regional manager's role, and then secondly the vision partner's role. So how has the regional manager's role changed from the past?
In the past, I think we saw ourselves as a rather centralised organisation with a few branch offices. Now what we're trying to do is really turn that on its head and actually say that the regions is where things will happen. And so the regional manager roles really step up in terms of their importance to the organisation. So they are critical roles. They report through to the GM Support and International Engagement, which is Mark Sewell, who's an outstanding leader. We're absolutely delighted to have him in the team. So they report right to the heart of the organisation. The expectation in these new roles is that they're not just managing a small group of employees, but are also managing interns and volunteers and running a large supported network across their region. The people need to be pretty multi-talented because you need an understanding of particularly sales, but equally an understanding of communities, how to engage with communities, how to speak across different contexts and so on. So in many ways, these people are world vision to the big communities that they represent. And frankly, if I wasn't the CEO, I'd want to be a regional manager because I think they're the most exciting jobs in the organisation. That's my personal view.
You're talking about this restructure. How far have you got along the path of the restructure at this stage?
We're almost there. So we've appointed the senior leadership team and a really exciting team is in place. We're now at the stage of the regional manager roles and the vision partner role. Once they're appointed, we've largely got the team in place. So we're hoping to go into 2013 with the team we want to take forward for the next 3 to 4 years, by February, March next year.
Again, probably relates to both roles in some ways, but the culture of the organisation, can you describe what World Vision's culture has been like and what you want it to be in this new structure and going forward?
World Vision always was grassroots, but as so often happens with grassroots organisation, as we grew, we professionalised, arguably not in the right way. And so as a consequence, I think we lost a lot of our grassroots connections to volunteers, to interns and to churches and others. And what we're really keen to do is return to being a really sophisticated, professionalised grassroots organisation. So in many ways what we're trying to do is through the regional managers really touch communities and give them a real sense that this is their world vision. And as part of that, a key part of our strategy is it's actually, funny enough, it's no longer about world vision. Rather, it's about creating a generation of New Zealanders who have a world vision. And how people choose to express that world vision is going to be up to them. We hope some of it will be through world vision, but good on them if they do it through Oxfam or Tear Fund or through a church group or through some other particular activity. We see it's more important that New Zealanders have a world vision more than it is important that they choose to support world vision. So that's the big change we're going through, and we see the regional manager roles as part of that. Now the vision partner role, similarly, really interesting work, because in there what we're seeing is a much closer working with significant New Zealanders, be they organisations, be they businesses, people of considerable wealth, because we think we can do much more effectively in that space, encouraging them to do something with their enormous resources that they've been given.
So in painting a picture of what somebody might do in each of these roles, say I'd become a regional manager, what would have happened in that first year I took up the role that would indicate I was doing my job well?
I think what would have happened is that you'd have set up a volunteer network. Now we've got somebody who will help you to do that, but you would have made contact with a large number of volunteers across your particular region. Secondly, that each region will have its own flavour, but if we take, for example, Christchurch, I think the expectation is that you are starting to play a role in the reconstruction of Christchurch and recognised for your role there. In the church space, our expectation will be that you're starting to form networks with key significant church leaders, but also civic leaders in each community. In Wellington, probably the expectation is more that you're starting to form links with government. So it's a slightly different mix in each area. in terms of the regional managers, that you are making connections with major donors and encouraging vision support. That's probably more, sorry, I'm leaping across to vision partners, that vision partners will be making connections with major donors in their region, including corporates. And it's not going cap in hand, it's actually going in there thinking through what value can World Vision bring to their business that collectively we can make an impact for the poor in the world. So that's thinking through, for example, that we're a global organisation. So we know India, for example, very well. And are there ways of connecting with Indian organisations or with organisations that want to work in India, as an example?
Somebody asked a question, how much self-direction does the role entail? Or is there some pretty strong guidelines around how the role is meant to be developed and grown?
No, we want people with a strong sense of self-direction. For each role, there will be very clear KPIs, very clear performance targets, both financial and non-financial. But provided that you're working within the ethos of World Vision and working in a collaborative way, then I wouldn't say you're on your own, because we give a lot of support to our staff, but you're free to go about doing your role as you choose. And my great expectation is that if we look at the regional manager roles, that each role will develop in different ways according to its context and its community and the team. In relation to the vision partners, again, enormous freedom to go actually out there and make the relationships, form the connections.
So I'm running out of questions here because I've had to jump over a few to get to. Are there any other comments you'd like to make that are pertinent to either role, the regional manager role or the vision partner role, that we haven't covered thus far?
Just I think if people are thinking about World Vision, I think it's perhaps one of its most exciting times in recent years to join us. We've done the hard work in the last couple of years, thinking through the organisation, thinking through the structure, and particularly thinking through the strategy. Although we are the biggest not-for-profit in New Zealand, what we were conscious of, if we weren't very careful, we could become like Kodak and just take ourselves for granted and suddenly find that actually we're no longer relevant. So we've done the hard thinking in the last 2 years about how do we maintain relevance in New Zealand and internationally. And now that we've got the strategy, we've got the direction, we've got the targets we set for ourselves and the culture we're trying to create, I think it's a stunning time to come on the journey, because I wouldn't say the hard work's been done at all, but what I would say is the foundations are now in place to really, hopefully, realise that vision of a generation of New Zealanders who have a World Vision. And, you know, when people are looking at roles from a career point of view, from a personal development point of view, my sense is this is one of the most exciting sectors you could possibly join at the moment. And what we promise is an incredibly exciting journey, travelling with some delightful people along the way, with an organisation that doesn't take itself too seriously, with an organisation that's always trying to do better at what it does, with an organisation that's got an enormous heart, but actually at the same time has got a real head for doing the right thing. So I think it's a great time to come and journey with us. And what we're really saying to people who are appointed to these roles is this is a journey that's not just of a year or two's duration. It could be a journey that could be with you for the rest of your life, whether it's with us or whether it's with other organisations. So what I say to people is, look, think seriously about coming on that journey with us. We really want to get the best team, and we're willing to go a long way to make that happen.
How integrated is that vision within the organisation, from board through to the person who might be opening the mail for you?
Great question, Gordon. Really integrated. It's fascinating. The board very much drove our strategy, and normally I've found in organisations, you develop a strategy, you spend most of your time convincing the board that we're going on the right path. The board passionately owns the strategy. But interestingly enough, as we've gone through the process of developing the strategy, and it's quite a major shift for us.
It has involved some pain.
Oh, it has. We've had to farewell a number of staff, not because they didn't get the strategy, but because we are so steadfast about building the best not-for-profit in New Zealand. And so to do that, we've really raised the bar. But what I find across the organisation is people get the strategy. They're a bit nervous about what it might mean sometimes for them, but intuitively understand this is the way to go. And so there's huge buy-in across the organisation. And with it, I think an impatience just to get on and make things happen. So it's a great time to be a part of World Vision.
Part of it is we haven't touched on is also the fact that the world is getting so much smaller, and there are other ways of communicating. You've talked about the digital age and needing to combine both the growth and voluntary involvement and community building and all that with this new. Do you want to comment on that just very briefly?
Yeah, very briefly. We are trying to build a state-of-the-art not-for-profit, which means that we have to be digital. I don't think we've been especially good at that, frankly, in the past. And so we're looking to the very best that we see around the world in terms of how we can actually build a whole digital way of engaging with World Vision, which is much more about giving power away than it is about us controlling things. Secondly, the strong push towards volunteers and encouraging people essentially to create not quite their own world vision, but to participate in ways that they're looking for. And thus, when it comes to the question of leaders, particularly for the regional managers and the vision partners, we're looking for people who aren't stuck in their ways, who are innovative and who are entrepreneurial and willing to try new and bright ways of doing things. There's no age barrier. What I'm finding is that some of our very best staff, some older staff, but equally some of our most talented staff are in the early 20s. And so there's no presumption that any of these roles suit a particular demographic at all. Yeah.
So we've tried to highlight there, just as we come to the last about 2 minutes of the webinar, the key points around those roles.
Look, that's a great summary. For regional managers, there is a sense in which we want leaders, not just managers. So there's an expectation that the person's character has a gravitas and a leadership timbre to it, which speaks to others even before they open their mouth. Commercially astute, because these regional managers are responsible for raising revenue for World Vision, that they are ambassadorial in the sense that they represent the values of World Vision and they don't need to interpret them, and ideally have sales management skills. Now I say ideally because we're happy to train for that if we get the right person. Then the vision partner managers need to have superb relationship management skills, and they need to have demonstrated them in some context previously for us to be satisfied. They need to be good presenters and have good presentational skills, and a drive towards results. So subtle differences between the two key roles, but significant competencies that we're looking for in each.
Thank you very much. So what we're wanting to do now is, in thanking you for being part of the webinar, and thank you, Chris, for coming in and so clearly outlining the nature of the organisation, the opportunity and the challenges there. Thank you again for that. But David and I will be in touch, and Rebecca probably too, to just get feedback from you about the different options that are here around which kind of role you're really looking for, and also the locations and what options there might be around that, because we're really looking for the best talent, and it might be that two of the most capable people are vying for the same role in Wellington or Christchurch or Auckland, and it might be that we'd want to be saying to both of you, we want to take both of you on board for World Vision, but would one of you look at taking it up in another region? So we'd like to have that kind of conversation around flexibility. So thank you very much again for participating, and we look forward to further conversations with you.
All right. Yes, thank you very much, folks, and we'll switch off now, but Gordon and I will be in touch with you in the next 2 days. Thanks, and God bless.